Welcome back to Dad's Garage. Going back in time a little bit on this one because I already started looking at it a week ago and I decided that this one would probably make an okay YouTube video. So this is a 2001 Honda Civic Coupe with a 1.7 liter engine, automatic transmission, and it's got a complaint of check engine light. Customer says that he just took it to the Honda dealer and it had an EVAP system code. I believe he said that they tightened the gas cap, erased the codes, and called it all good. They said it was fine. Well, the check engine light came back on, he said, about 4 days later, and he brought it to me. So I take a quick look at it, checked codes, and I'm going back in time. Like I said, I already started looking at this, and I might even showed you some footage that I already started doing it on this car, but I want to start back from the beginning so that everybody can understand and follow along. So let's check codes, see what it's got. I'm using Topon Phoenix Lite 2 today. I purchased this a few months ago and I've been playing around with it and I seem to like it a lot. I really like this tool. I bought it with the LabScope kit. Really love it. It is what it is. You know, it's not like the biggest screen or whatever. It doesn't have the topology like everyone raves about, but what do you need topology for? I don't need it. Anyways, we'll let this query all the modules. I think it takes about 2 minutes on this slow Honda, and we'll see what we've got. We've got our 3 codes. I already knew about that because I've already looked at this, but I'll show you what we had for codes. Another thing is that this tool has screen recording, which I may start incorporating into my videos. Yeah, I could just, do a screen recording. But that sounds like some extra work for me and not a whole lot of, what did we gain from it? You can still see the screen. So yeah, it's taking a little bit of time, but it's scanning for a lot of modules that this old 2001 vehicle will not have. But that just kind of shows you what kind of capabilities you have on this tool, that it will communicate with all these different systems. And I'll show you, because I have my other tool, the King Bolan. I have this one that they sent me, the stranger from the internet sent me for free, and I've been comparing. And I'll show you a couple of the differences between these two tools, even though they are pretty similar in software. They basically use the same software. So this is what I ended up for codes. We've got a VTEC system failure code and the P1457 EVAP leakage code, canister area. I already did some testing on the VTEC system. I will do it again because I told the customer, hey, I couldn't duplicate it. I couldn't duplicate the VTEC fault. So we will go for another road test and maybe I'll try out that screen recording thing, right? And we will test the VTEC system, and I'll show you how I test the VTEC system. I don't think that there's really anything further that I can do with the scan tool because the scan tool will let me operate. It'll let me operate the 3 EVAP valves, but it won't let me do it with the engine running because what I wanted was I wanted the engine to be running so I could operate the purge valve and test the vacuum coming out of it. So let me go under the hood and I'll show you how I ended up where I ended up. So the first thing that I do when I am testing an EVAP system is I will look at the fuel tank pressure sensor as well as other pressure sensors on the vehicle to verify that I can actually trust them, because the fuel tank pressure sensor is a huge part of the EVAP system. If that sensor is not reading correctly, well, your EVAP system tests are all going to be wrong. 0.23 psi, I'm okay with that because 0.2 psi is not very much. But what I think I'll do is I'll open up the gas cap and make sure that that goes a little bit closer to 0. I already did all this, so I'm already happy with the fuel tank pressure sensor operation. Again, what I found was that during the EVAP system self-test, because I can command a self-test with this tool, it takes a little while and it doesn't really do much for me. Where is it? Special function or actuation test. Anyways, so during this test, I noticed that the fuel. So that just shows you what this tool can do. And I'll show you what the King Bolan, the difference, because this is a fully functional professional grade tool. This has bidirectional controls. I can I can send commands out to the car with this tool. Function test. Yep. Ignition off. Good old Honda beep. Start the engine. So anyways, I went into this EVAP system test. I let it run and complete. And then, so we've got our fuel tank pressure sensor voltage. It does not show us pressure anymore. I can't remember where I looked it up, but it tells me the fuel tank pressure sensor voltage value, which is normal. But the important part is that when we see these valves get commanded on and off, and we see the purge come up. So let's say the vent valve, canister vent shut solenoid is on, meaning the valve is shut and sealed, and the purge solenoid starts coming up. So we've essentially closed off the system and started to pull a vacuum. When you see these two values move, right, you should see the fuel tank pressure sensor do something. I don't care what the value is, if it's good, bad, and I don't know what it means or not. When we are drawing a vacuum or pressure of any sort on that fuel tank, that sensor should move. Okay, so that's where I decided I need to look at that purge valve, because I saw that the fuel tank pressure sensor just sits there and does nothing. And doesn't matter what happens, nothing moves. So of course it sets the EVAP code, because it's not pulling any vacuum on the system, and the computer can see that. So this EVAP self-test will actually run for another probably 5 or 10 minutes, and then it's going to pop up. It'll say rev up the engine to 3,800 RPM for 10 minutes or something crazy like that. I've already gone through all this process, and I've determined to see that purge valve. You're not seeing anything really change. Even though the vent's not closed yet, you should see something happening. Anyways, let's go under the hood. I'll show you how I further confirmed that I needed to look at that purge valve just from this. So we'll go back to data, EVAP purge control duty cycle. So we're going to verify that the computer is actually commanding it to do something before we go check it, right? So now let's go under the hood with this tool. Okay, so here we are under the hood. We still see that the purge control is at least commanded to do something. The purge solenoid is, focus, that guy right there. So this hose right there, this hose goes to the engine. That's where your vacuum source is. When the valve opens and closes, it operates. It applies vacuum on this hose. There's your EVAP test port. It applies vacuum on this hose, which runs through this pipe to the other side, and it runs to this vapor line right here. So this vapor line goes to your fuel tank, and that's your EVAP system. So from here back to the purge valve, you should have a vacuum. Whenever this guy's commanded to almost 30% duty cycle right now, we should have a vacuum. So when I disconnect this hose, nothing, no vacuum. So that tells me right away my problem, or at least my starting point, is to diagnose the EVAP purge solenoid. So I took the purge control solenoid and I took the two screws out. I back probed on the, I can't remember which color wire it is, blue and yellow I think. That's the ground from the ECM to ground that solenoid and actually operate it. And I've got this running over to the scope here. Nothing's going on at the moment. We're sitting here high at battery voltage essentially, and what you're seeing there is voltage spikes from the ignition coils, so ignore those. Let's go look at the scan tool and see what is our actual duty cycle being commanded to, and Let's see if this actually looks correct or not. All right, I brought everything in the car with me so we could see. Again, those voltage spikes are just going to be from the ignition coils. On the King Bolan, I've got a EVAP purge control solenoid duty cycle of almost 30%, which we are not seeing here. We should see a 30% duty cycle ground signal. It should be pulling all the way down here. This is 0 volts, so this is your ground down here. That tells us that these voltage spikes are not what we're looking for. We should see a nice square wave all the way to ground, all the way back to battery voltage in a 30% duty cycle. So do you know what that tells me? It means we probably have some sort of broken wire between the purge valve and the engine control module. So I think I'm going to look up where's the engine control module. If I remember correctly, on these Hondas, it's underneath the passenger seat there. So I may have to open up, pull the carpet back and get a pinout and figure out which terminals that we're looking for, and we'll do a continuity test to make sure that that is what is going on. I could explain on the wiring schematic how I'm hooked up and make that make a little more sense for you too. So here on the wiring schematic, we've got the ECM here, we've got our fused power up here, we've got our purge solenoid right there. Okay, so on the black and yellow, anytime the key is on or in start, we should have power at all times, okay? And on this wire, the ECM will pulse ground. It'll duty cycle ground to either control that valve a little bit open or all the way open, right? It's gonna flow more or not, okay? So I have my probe connected on pin 2 directly at the EVAP purge valve. So if let's say that this wire is not being grounded, you could just imagine that as the valve is closed so the water does not flow through the pipes. But since the valve is closed down here, any voltage or pressure will be, you'll have that potential all the way up to the point that it is open. So, or the, that an open circuit, I mean. If we were talking in water terminology, water and pipes and valves and stuff, you would have a little valve there. You'd essentially have pressure all the way up to this point. So I plugged in right at that point right there, and I do have a full 12 volts. So that proves that this fuse is okay, this wiring is okay, and I'm getting at least power up to and through that solenoid. So the solenoid's probably okay also. But we are not seeing any ground signal from the ECM. So I need to access the ECM. I'll access this connector here, and I will test from here to here and verify whether this wire is our problem or not. So I think that this wire is probably open somewhere, broken wire, crusty wire, whatever we're gonna find. Here's a quick diagram of the system related to that P1457 code. We've got our engine, which would be our manifold vacuum source. That's the source of vacuum to suck the fuel vapors rather than liquid fuel, because we're just trying to control the vapors, evaporative emissions, right? So that's sort of our vacuum source. The purge valve is our valve that can turn on or off, or a purge duty cycle anywhere from 0 to 100%. So that controls how much vacuum is going to be placed on the EVAP system and how much vapor we're pulling in. The canister vent valve, this should be normally open at all times, and the only time that we close that valve is when we are trying to do a leak test of the system. So when the computer decides it wants to do a self-test on the system, it will close that vent valve, which will essentially cause the entire fuel tank and system to be a closed container. We're gonna pull a vacuum on it with this valve, a controlled amount, fuel tank pressure sensor right here to measure how much vacuum we've actually pulled. And what the result is gonna be is whether that sensor, either it holds the vacuum or it doesn't. So it's gonna tell you, well, just how fast did the vacuum leak down? Was it a small leak or a large leak? So what we're chasing here is a P1457, which means we've got a leak on the canister side of the system. We've got the two-way bypass valve also. That's a little something that Honda does so that they can kind of really fine tune on where is that leak, right? Because what they're doing is that they're changing the state of that valve, the two-way valve, to either leak test the canister side or the fuel tank side, and they can get a better idea of where exactly the leak is. It's not really that, you know, I wouldn't say it's needed that much. Standard EVAP diagnostics without that little valve, you can basically test the entire system the same way. This is just a little bonus that Honda is doing. So what we have going on here is that the purge valve is showing duty cycle. It's showing that it's commanded to about 30% or 40% at some times, and I have zero vacuum. I have no vacuum getting out of that purge valve to the rest of the system. Therefore, the ECM flags that as a large leak. It says this system is leaking so bad we can't even build vacuum. But the ECM doesn't know that the purge valve is simply failing to send any vacuum to the system at all. And our testing has revealed that we probably have some sort of electrical fault with the purge valve circuits. So let's continue. So I took a little break and I did some research. Yeah, the PCM, the ECM is underneath the dash. It's not underneath the carpet, it doesn't look like. But I don't really want to crawl underneath the dash if I don't have to, so I decided, well, is there an easier way to just do a quick test? And I decided maybe I should use the scan tool to command the purge valve on and use a test light just to see if it lights up and just verify that, yes, I do need to go under the dash. So back at the car, what does that look like? I'll grab this scanner. There. The test light that I had wasn't working, and whenever I tried to touch the bulb and see why it wasn't working, well, the bulb crumbled to pieces, and that was that. So I did find this, and we're gonna see if this works. Got our valve here. We're gonna back probe on the correct wire, but I'm gonna disconnect the solenoid when I do it, and we're gonna see if that wiring will hold any load. So, nope, data, we don't want data. Actuation. Single solenoid. Does not want the engine running. Not function not supported. Okay, did I not turn the key on? Let's try that again. Like magic. Okay, so purge solenoid duty cycle 0%. It's commanded off. If I click on, it commands it to 100% duty cycle, so the test light should light bright at that point. So let's verify that we can trust our test light. I don't think I have enough hands for this because this little piece of crap light that I found doesn't have alligator clips on it. I'll do what I can. Look at that, at least one of them's working. Okay, so we are testing for a ground. Stick this over here, and I'll go get whatever back probe I was using earlier. Okay, so I've got my stuff rigged up here. No joke. On, let's say 100% duty cycle. I'm using a T-pin. I'm not actually at the shop today. Look at that, it's not lighting. That should be lighting up right now with a ground. We've got no ground to the purge valve. That verifies, look, it's commanded to 100%. Not lighting the light, yet the light works. So that verifies that we need to go under the dash and check the wiring between the purge valve and the ECM. Okay, so after lowering the glove box, I can see the ECM up in there now. Just need to figure out which connector it is and which terminal. Look at that. We've got some sort of aftermarket wiring hacked in. Could that be related? Did somebody hack some wiring? Did they cut a wire somewhere that they shouldn't have? Or what? What's going on here? Okay. Anyways, we're going to test the continuity of the wire and verify whether the wire is open or not. If the wiring is okay, oops, then we can assume that the ECM may be having a problem grounding the purge valve, so the ECM may be faulty. Okay, back on the schematic, apparently B21. Does that mean connector B, terminal 21? Does that mean row B21? We don't know. Might have to find some more information there on the pinout view. These links never work, so I have to search them out and find them. Stand by. Look at this, found this buried deep within. They've got terminal 21, connector B. It even gives you a descriptor of what you should see. Further down, there was even a picture of all of the ECM connectors somewhere. Okay, there it is right there. This is the pinout for the ECM, A, B, C, and E. So we are after the connector B, 24 pin, and we're after terminal 21 to do that continuity test on the wiring. I've got my guides printed out here. I've got my pictures of my ECM connectors. I've got my wiring schematic. Now I can go back under the dash and continue testing. So if I go by this picture here, I've got a 31 pin and a 31 pin on each end. The one we are after is a 24 pin, and we've also got a 22 pin. So we're gonna have the larger of the two in the middle. Where does that translate to the car? That black one looks like the small one, so it's that white connector. I'm not going to disconnect it if I can help it. I'm going to back probe it because I don't really want to start disconnecting things. I don't want to disconnect the radio, deal with stuff like that if I don't have to. We're going to back probe that and do a continuity test on the wiring. So let me see if I can kind of get this stuff out of the way. Where's my little schematic? Terminal 21 is at the bottom of the connector all by itself. See that? There's a blank terminal, two blank terminals, and one on the end. We are after, what? A yellow and blue wire all by itself on that white connector. So, zoom in. I can see better in the camera than I can see just by my eyes. It's right there. Is it? Is that it? That yellow and blue one. Right there. Can't get in there. I've got to get back probed on that one. And then we're going to do a continuity test to the purge valve. See if we can verify our wiring fault and then what to do about it. So I'm going to be using this meter today. It's more of a household electrician's meter. Of course the battery's dead. Gotta go find a battery, and the dog's chewed on it. Isn't that nice? I don't have my fluke meter with me today, so I'm gonna be using this for the continuity test. I've compared it to the fluke and I trust it, so we're good there. I just need to go find some batteries. And we're gonna run, I don't think the leads are long enough on this to reach all the way, maybe, but we'll see. I'm using the back of my truck as a workbench today. Just went and robbed some batteries out of somebody's remote. I'm gonna throw these back on the meter and continue on. And if you keep hearing airplanes, it's because there's at least one, I think 2 or 3 of them flying around doing aerobatics right now. Okay, so back at it. Always verify that your tools are working properly. Yep, the continuity tester is working okay. Let me set us up on the purge solenoid over here and the ECM in there. I may need a jumper lead to reach all the way. Let me see if I can catch these airplanes on video, maybe. We'll see. Yep, there it is. They were doing loops and flips and all sorts of stuff. Okay, so I've got the black lead connected to my the yellow and blue wire on the purge solenoid connector, and I've got it stretched over here with the meter sitting here, and the cord reaches in there. You know what this means is that I don't need to rig up some test leads with alligator clips to reach all the way. We'll just listen for the beep, right? I don't know, we may need to see the value. Well, look at that. 0.2 ohms of resistance. So that wire is not broken. It's not open circuit. Could it be green and crusty and not making it all the way? Should we do a voltage drop test on it? Okay, so now look. I've got the red probe connected on the yellow and blue wire, terminal 21 of connector B. We're running it out here. I've got it connected to this lead. So I'm essentially taking the place of the ECM grounding the system right now. I've got my test light connected to the purge solenoid, the yellow and blue wire. So that's basically the other end. And we are going to simulate the ECM grounding that wire. So that tells us that the wiring is okay. Do we have a faulty ECM? How could it have failed? Could it be a bad purge solenoid killed the ECM? That's probably the only way that that could happen, unless somebody was in here testing and they blew it up. You never know. So I removed the purge solenoid so I can do a resistance check on it, and we'll determine if it's shorted. If it's shorted, then we would know why the ECM driver had failed. Man, I need to get a camera mount. But, let me see if I can rig this in here. See that? There's 2 of them. Told you. They're doing aerobatics. They do loops. Wherever they're doing it though, it's like right behind the trees, so I can't get a shot of it. So I just had it touching both terminals. There we go. About 33 ohms, 32 to 33 ohms. That is not shorted. That's not a shorted solenoid. That would not blow out the driver in the ECM. Of course, if this was supposed to have a clipping diode inside of it that was bad, that could blow out the ECM. So this is kind of a hard sell. It's looking like a faulty ECM. No doubt that's going to be expensive. Do I even have the equipment to replace and program a Honda ECM? I don't think I do, and if I do, I'll have to do the research and verify that. I would replace this and the ECM because I don't trust that this wouldn't blow it up, right? So I'll have to do my research on this. So now that I've verified the wiring is okay, I can reassemble all this, put all this stuff back together, and go. I have to do some sit down time and see what it's going to take to replace this ECM and see what it's going to take to get it programmed and all that good stuff. But let's go take a break real quick. So I'm gonna take a quick breath of fresh air. You hear all those frogs? Yeah, ambiance, ambient noise. That's why I don't have any music in my videos. Music's annoying. It covers up all the details. Covers up all the cool stuff you guys wanted to hear. Or maybe that's just me. Whatever. All right, we can get back to work now. Okay, back here in research mode. Honda programming, Honda J2534. Where did I see that? Vehicle communication interfaces. That is the list of approved devices that they know that those will work. The Mongoose Honda, that may be an option to look into. I used to have access to a Bosch MVCI. Those work pretty okay. I don't have one anymore. So at the moment, I don't have the equipment to properly program this Honda if I were to replace the ECM. So I may have to send this customer back to the dealer, and I wonder what they're gonna say. They're gonna dispute what I had to say, I bet. That's just how it goes when you get two shops or two technicians that the diagnostics contradict. You never know. There we have it, the Mongoose cable, about $500 plus, and I don't really do enough Hondas or Honda programming to really justify it, so I think I'm going to tell him to go back to the dealer and have them replace the ECM. So back onto the VTEC thing, we had a VTEC performance code. That right there is the VTEC solenoid and the VTEC oil pressure sensor, or the switch. So when the solenoid turns on, it sends oil pressure to the camshaft and it alters the valve lift. And the pressure switch changes state to verify to the ECM that that has indeed happened. So it's a verification check that when that code sets, basically, the ECM has commanded it on and the switch did not change state, or the switch is in the wrong state when it shouldn't be. So we're gonna go take a drive, or possibly, I think I did see in the scan tool menu it said VTEC test. Let's try that. Back here in the car, we do have a VTEC test. Keep the engine speed above 3,000 RPM. Okay. We have to be at a minimum temperature of 140 degrees to run this test. Stand by. Okay, well, we reached that minimum and then it changed the screen on me. Okay, I have to click OK. No, technical difficulties. That's why I usually don't prefer to use an intrusive test like this, because you run into stuff like this and it just, wastes your time. It told me to release the throttle, but I wonder if that was incorrect. Should I just lie and say I did? Elapsed time, now it's doing something. I don't know if I trust this test at all. I don't. Let's go back. Read data stream. Whoops. Data stream. VTEC. This is all Okay, VTEC solenoid, VTEC pressure switch. Let's hit OK. And graph. Okay, so, oh, we could even do a combine. So the VTEC system's only going to operate above 3,000 RPM, and apparently only when you're under load. So we are going to have to drive this to just test it in its natural state, letting the ECM make its commands on its own. So, and that's what I did before. So like I said in the beginning of this video, I did already look at this vehicle about a week ago when I started. You know, I had a little bit of time. I took a look at it, drove it, and I said, well, the VTEC system isn't really having a problem right now. You would, of course, want to check the engine oil level first, and I did, and it was not at the minimum, but it also wasn't full, so it was kind of half full. And yeah, oil level can have an effect on your VTEC system, so you never know. It could just be low oil level, and that's it. So I'll have to move some cars around here, and we'll have to take this for a quick run. So I've got Mrs. Dad's garage driving right now. Let me see if I can try that screen recording feature. Starting recording. Okay, so this is normal driving right now. The VTEC system has not been activated. Step on it real quick, please. You see how that VTEC solenoid was commanded on, and then the VTEC pressure switch responded, and then when we turned off, again, the pressure switch responded. Right now we're going down a hill, so we're not going to have any engine load. We're going to basically repeat this test. I'm going to have her step on it over and over again, and we're going to make sure that that pressure switch changes state every time that the VTEC solenoid activates. And then if we find any faults, great. But if not, then we'll do a combine graph and put the pressure switch on top of the solenoid so that we can check the timing. We can see if there's any sort of delay between the time that the solenoid turns on and the switch responds. So give us a minute, stand by. We're gonna... Okay, so here we go again. VTEC system just activated. Let off the throttle, yep, deactivate. Get on it again. And this is what I experienced the first time that I looked at this car, is that the VTEC system was working perfectly every time. Do it a few more times. Let off. Do it again. Again, let off. See, it's changing state. We're coasting no throttle. As you can see, I put the throttle angle on the screen. Go ahead and hit it. Let off. Again. Let off. So, it looks like the VTEC system is still working okay. So I may just have to tell him that that's a code that we'll have to keep an eye on. We'll do a combined graph so that we can check the timing of everything. Let me change this around so it's easier to see. So combine, can I just turn these ones off maybe? Yes. Okay, perfect. No, I wanted a combined graph. I wanted them on top of each other. Just those two. There we go. Okay, go ahead, hit it. So now what we're seeing, let off. We're seeing the timing of the orange line is the VTEC solenoid and the blue line is the VTEC pressure switch. And it looks like the very moment that the solenoid turns on, the pressure switch is also changing state. And then again, when we release, there's a slight delay in the release, but it's almost instantaneous. Go ahead and hit it a few more times. Again, looking like the VTEC system is really working just fine. Okay, let off. Great, so this is the Phoenix Light 2. I also brought the King Bolan with us just so I could show you the difference in the tools. Let me hook the King Bolan up and I'll show you what that tool looks like. At this point, the diagnostic video is done, and this is now just bonus content on the King Bolan. Okay, so now we're going to switch over to the King Bolan. This is just bonus content now. Our diagnostic is done. I said I would show you guys a little bit of the difference between this tool and the pro grade tool. This is more like a consumer grade tool. I think there's only 4 systems that it's able to communicate with. It can do engine, transmission, it can do ABS, and it can do airbag. But this tool will not do bidirectional controls like the other one. So the Phoenix Lite, the Topon, I can actually send a command to the car. I can tell it, I want you to run the purge valve. I want you to run this VTEC test. I want you to do the EVAP self-test. This tool will not do that. Although it looks like it's almost the exact same software. So we'll see if there's any difference in the data coverage. So far, everything basically looks the same. Health report. Engine is not running. I think it'll still work if the engine's running. This one does the health report a lot faster than the Topon does because it's scanning a lot less of the modules, or it's looking for a lot less modules. It doesn't support as many. So we'll let that finish. Another thing is that this tool will also do the screen recording. Should it pop up on the screen? There it is right there. And I think you can just tap on that and hold it and drag it around. So we'll start a screen recording on this tool also. Again, we've got the same codes almost displayed in the same way. Enter. As you can see, we don't have the functions menu, and we only had like 4 systems we could speak to. So that just highlights the difference in the tools. This is a consumer grade tool, but if you had the knowledge on what data you were looking at, this tool, I believe, will give us the same type of data, all of the same information that we already used on diagnosing the fault. EVAP. Yeah, we have the EVAP purge control duty cycle, which I used earlier. I used that value to diagnose the system and determine that the purge valve was not working. So we've got a fuel tank pressure sensor, and we also have VTEC. So let me go back and just only look at the VTEC information, or look at the same few data points that we were looking at before. Engine speed, VTEC, throttle position, hit OK. And we don't have the multi-graph option like we did on the Topon, where I could put all 4 in separate graphs, but I do have the combine, and it will not let me combine the VTEC. So that's kind of a disadvantage there, but I could graph these 2 against each other, which is useless to me at this moment. I don't really need to do a combined graph on the engine speed and throttle. Let's go ahead and drive us back and just see what this data looks like. Just to showcase the tool. We could still use it to diagnose this problem, but we would have to go about it a little differently. We can't use the graphing, and we can't necessarily check the timing of what's happening, but we could just watch the data as it goes. Yeah, see that? VTEC solenoid changed state. It turned on while the pressure switch turned off, let off the throttle a little bit. And they changed. They're opposite of each other. Yep, so we could use this tool to diagnose it in the same way, we just don't have the graphing. So I think that's it for this video. I'm going to pass the information along to the customer, and so one more thing. I consulted my peers, and one guy, he reminded me, he said, hey, check your grounds. And yeah, I did check all 4 ECM grounds, and they are good. I didn't show that. Another thing is, a few guys said, well, can you really trust the scan tool? And the answer to that is, I'm not sure, because I haven't had that scan tool for very long. I haven't used it on very many Hondas. What I did also do was, from this ECM connector, I plugged in the purge valve and I grounded that wire, and the purge valve does operate, so I can hear it click, click, click every time I ground the wire. So that further confirms that the ECM is not doing what it's supposed to. I commanded the bypass valve and the vent valve on and off with the scanner also, and they did operate, so I think I can trust the scanner. I also went and took that Topon and I plugged it into a 2000 Honda Odyssey and ran some actuation tests on the EVAP system, and yes, the scan tool does seem to be successfully able to command this Honda. So in summary, with all the testing, it looks like we've got a faulty ECM, and that's what I'm going to tell the customer. I'm going to tell them you should replace the EVAP purge solenoid and the ECM, just in case there's a bad diode inside that solenoid or something, and that was the reason that it did fail. Anyways, that's all I've got for now.